Soul Series podcast, and we're back again with another episode. Supriya Chechi, and we're continuing the Bhagavad Gita series, and we're on the ninth chapter, and we're discussing the 19th verse. So yeah, we'll start. We'll start here, Supriya Chechi. How are you?
Okay,
Hare Krishna.
thank you, Hari Krishna, Jai Srila Prabhupada. Thank you, Kanan. Happy to be back to carry on with the wonderful ninth chapter.
Mm.
Here, we last class we heard about there was an analogy or like an image, a simile that in the purport that Srila Prabhupada uses of why take the staircase when you can take the elevator to the top. Do you remember that? You remember that?
Ah,
Eh,
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, why go? Why take the longer? Basically, why take the longer route when you can just take this
Bhakti
easier
Yoga.
path, Bhakti Yoga path, and get to
That's
the
right.
top? Yeah.
It's saying because that was about how some prefer to worship demigods, and the point being made is demigods are all right as they are his energies and they are appointed to do different duties in the material world, but that's still an indirect path. So why go? And Prabhupada gives another example. If you get to see the president directly, why would you waste your time first going to the private secretary of the president? You have some way of meeting him directly with your grievance or with
Mm.
your whatever it is, your request or demand. Why waste time going via the private secretary or the undersecretary to the president and then going up? It's just smarter to go directly and get the job done. So that was last class. And in
I,
these verses, yeah, go
I
on.
have one doubt actually this because I was just thinking about this today. Like, I mean, a lot of people like they wouldn't like. I mean, I think we both would know that it would be the easier path, but for a lot of other people, they wouldn't know that this path would be like an easier path and would be the path because I've heard like other people from different paths say almost the same thing about their own path. They will be like
Right, right, right.
that this is the easier path and this is how it's easier to get to where you want to get to like this and all the other paths are a stepping stone to this path. So
But
I've heard.
it depends what you're comparing it with and what the drawbacks on the other paths are or what the attractions are for them. It depends. If you're comparing Bhakti Yoga with Karma Yoga and Ashtanga Yoga and Dhyana Yoga and Jnana Yoga, then it's easy to say because in this same chapter we heard of how this Bhakti Yoga is easy, is simple, and it is joyfully performed. Susukham kartum abhyayam makes
Mm,
one very happy once. But that's not the case if you're pursuing Jnana Yoga. You become more and more isolated and alone. And that's why it appeals to the impersonalists. You withdraw from the world literally to try to figure out things and to find the force behind it. And with Karma Yoga, you have to get everything right in order to get the results. A slight mistake will cost you very deep. There's a famous story about a king. I'm trying to get the name. He was doing his kingly duty, and annually he would distribute so many cows to the different brahmanas. One cow I think went away from one brahmana's herd to the other brahmana, and a fight ensued. And the king, King Nimi, I think his name is, and the king, we are told this in Shastra, and the king wrongly decided the issue. He settled the issue in a way it was unfair because he wasn't really aware of the actual facts. And he lost all his pious credit because he got cursed by a Brahmana. And in a traditional society that's working well, the curse of a Brahmana is considered something dreadful because Krishna or the Supreme Lord speaks through his Brahmana. The Brahmins are his mouth. So if they curse or they say something, then Krishna honors it. So unfortunately, this King Nimi, who'd been, doing so many good things, loses all the pious credit because he really hurt and angered this Brahmin. And then he gets the form of a big chameleon or a lizard inside a well. And that is the story of, I think that's the story where when the Pandavas are playing ball and Arjuna has to retrieve a ball that's fallen into a well. He does this famous, his like archery stunt because he's so skillful of many blades of grass that get attached to each other, and somehow he shoots I'm not sure if it's arrows or if it's blades of grass. But he does it in such a way that he retrieves the ball, but in the process, that lizard stuck in the well also gets liberation. He kind of comes out, and that lizard has actually been a famous king in his previous life.
Mm.
In karma yoga, not the way we loosely bandy around the word, I am a karma yogi, I do my duty. It's not so simple. If you want perfection, which is basically to get moksha, liberation, it takes so many lifetimes to get everything right, and the slightest mistake costs you dearly. This is a problem if you're taking karma yoga as a path to the ultimate goal. Jnana yoga, we already discussed that it gets very impersonal, and the jnani gets puffed up because knowledge means power, and he often falls victim to his own pride. Now, as far as Ashtanga Yoga or Dhyana Yoga is concerned, we saw it's full of so many austerities that are difficult to do. And Arjuna himself rejects his 5,000 years ago, saying it's easier to control the wind than to control the mind, as is required in Ashtanga Yoga. So these would be our answers. Why Bhakti Yoga? Why is it the direct path? Now, as far as if you're instead comparing with demigod worship, right? With demigod worship, and actually this particular purport is referring to demigod worship. That why waste your time going indirectly? They are also the energies of Lord Krishna, but it's an indirect method. The answer to that would be, as long as we are in demigod worship, it's still business mentality. It is not bhakti, and it's fear based. I break so many coconuts for you. You please take care of my results in the exam that's coming up. I offer. Now, why is that? Because only Krishna is endowed with certain terrific qualities. Actually, this is all given very clearly in certain scriptural texts written by the Goswamis. To be so attractive, none of the demigods are that attractive. They may hold we may feel some attraction for one of them. Some people really like Ganapati. They like his cuteness, or they like Shakta worship, Devi and her splendor. They like Lord Shiva. They consider him, meaning he's just his austerity, and some people feel confident that he can protect. But none of them have that. There are particular three top qualities amongst the various qualities listed in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu in Goswami literature, that Krishna's qualities, that he's all attractive. He's so attractive that it takes away our fear-based business mentality when we start to worship him. That's the difference between the demigods and this. And therefore, it starts becoming such a joyful exchange that it's far superior. We make progress much faster. When there is fear in the mind, it's very cautious the steps we take. If you're entering a room, if you're frightened and we don't know what is there in the darker parts of the room, you're going to step very cautiously, right? Whereas instead, the room is lit up by some splendid light, you can see everything clearly, you're very attracted to something sitting in the corner of the room, you rush towards it. Therefore, Bhakti Yoga with Krishna as the object of our worship, it makes for much faster and rapid advancement as compared to demigod worship, which has its strengths, which gives its rewards, but basically it is based on a foundation of fear-based, bargaining kind of mentality.
So is like a follow-up to this question would be like, is Bhakti Yoga only like, is it only meant for Krishna, or is it only tied to Krishna? Like, does Bhakti mean, because Bhakti means devotional service, or Bhakti
Right.
Yoga means devotional service. So is that only like, does that concept only apply for Krishna, or is it like separately also applied when it comes to like Shiva or some other god in a different context? Like,
If bhakti, you're talking about mellows and very soft and pure feelings in the heart.
hmm,
There are great devotees of Lord Shiva there have been,
hmm,
who show a complete, or you can say, single-minded devotion. They don't want to hear the name of any other Lord, not just Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva, there was one, I think his name, finally he was named Mani something, because he wore big heavy bells on his ears and which would keep ringing to shut out the names of Vishnu, because he was living in under a Raja, a Hindu Raja, historically
hmm.
placed, who was a Vishnu worshipper. But because he was a great Shiva worshipper, he walked around with these bells to, you can check that up also on Google, to shut out. So there are people with single-minded devotion. In Lord Chaitanya's own Leela, there was a character called Murari Gupta, a Bengali, a devotee,
Yeah, Marai Gupta, yeah.
who was a great follower of Bhakta Hanuman. And Lord Chaitanya didn't disturb that at all. He said, okay, if you have, and after all, Hanuman ji is considered a dasa of Lord Ram, which is just another form of Lord Krishna or Vishnu. So that was okay. So if you're asking, can't worship to these other, some of the demigods, in rare instances, we at least tinged with that kind of bhakti? Definitely the answer is yes. But it's not pure bhakti, because Krishna is what is called Rasaraj, that he is the embodiment of so many rasas of bliss, which these other demigods don't have. With Hanumanji, it can only be Dasya Bhav, because that is he is basically a dasa of Lord Ram. But there are so many bhavas or rasas or feelings, if you like, that go even beyond dasya bhav. There is sakhya of friendship as between Arjuna and Krishna. There is vatsalya. There is, of course, topmost is madhurya. So if you ask, finally those other types of worship in a particular lifetime, it may satisfy the living entity, but beyond that, there isn't scope for growth. That is how it is possible that they shift their object of worship and go back to Krishna. I mean, finally get to Krishna. Because he is the reservoir of all rasas. What is the correct term for it? Not just rasaraj. He is, okay, I'm not getting that. Now, as far as Lord Shiva is concerned, Shiva himself personally, he's Ashutosh, or he's easily pleased. See, someone who has feelings of bhakti for Lord Shiva. Shiva is known to pass on, once he is very pleased, he pass on his own devotee to redirect them towards Krishna worship. Because in terms of granting the ultimate, whether it is liberation, salvation, positioning them in the spiritual planets, Lord Shiva doesn't have the power to do it. So he directs them towards some Vishnu form or to Krishna. Okay, these are the reasons why when we say bhakti, we specifically mean Krishna. Because those different types of rasas, the different categories, one is of course just respect, and then after that there is you serve in the form of a servant, then there is sakhya, or you are friendly, then there is vatsalya, and there is ultimately madhurya. These are possible only with Krishna. All right, now here this verse 19, we are going to verse yeah, you already got verse 19. Okay. Yeah. Shall we try to chant this verse 19?
Yeah.
Tapamyaham aham
Aham
varsham
varsham nigranami
nigranami
utsrajami
utsrajami cha amritam
amrita
chaiva
chaiva
mrityuscha
mrityuscha
sat sat
sadvasachaham
cham
arjuna
arjuna. Again.
tapamyam
Tapamyaham
aham varsham
nigranami
nigranami utsrajami cha amritam
amritam
chaiva
chaiva
mrityuscha
mrityuscha sat
sadvasachaham arjuna
arjuna. Again. Tapamyaham
tapami aham aham varsham
varsham
nigranami
nigranami
utsrajami cha
utsrajami cha
amritam
amritam
chaiva
chaiva
mrityuscha
mrityuscha sat
sadvasachaham
satyam
arjuna.
arjuna. All right. Translation. Like to read, please, Kanan?
Yeah. O Arjuna, I give heat and I withhold and send forth the rain. I am immortality and I am also death personified. Both spirit and matter are in me.
Okay. I
Krishna.
give heat and I withhold and send forth the rain. I am immortality and I am also death personified. Both spirit and matter are in me. Now the purport, it's a short purport. Let's see what what Srila Prabhupada says. Would you like to read, please?
Yeah. Krishna, by his different energies, diffuses heat and light through the agency of electricity and the sun. During the summer season, it is Krishna who checks rain from falling from the sky, and then during the rainy season, he gives unceasing torrents of rain. The energy which sustains us by prolonging the duration of our life is Krishna, and Krishna meets us at the end as death. By analyzing these different energies of Krishna, one can ascertain that for Krishna there is no distinction between matter and spirit, or in other words, he is both matter and spirit. In the advanced stage of Krishna consciousness, one therefore makes no such distinctions. He sees only Krishna in everything. Since Krishna is both matter and spirit, the gigantic universal form comprising all material manifestations is also Krishna, and his pastimes in Vrindavan as two-handed Shamsundara playing on a flute are those of the Supreme Personality of world.
Okay, so you can we can deduce from this that the climate changes we are seeing, the un characteristic or unseasonal torrential rain that's doing such damage in different parts of the country, um, weather forecast, the meteorological department of India uh, basically confessing that they are now helpless and they can't predict accurately because of such huge weather changes. Now, I know that even about, say, 5 years ago, up to 2019, okay, not 5 years, 3 years ago, one could go safely to Uttarakhand in the month of October, very confidently that the rains are over. The post-rain kind of showers, the rainy season is over, and the showers have brought out like valleys full of flowers and so on. I've been twice in early October, mid-October. Now, but last 2 years, it's totally unseasonal and uncharacteristic, the devastation that the rains are doing at this time in October, in the middle of October, in that Uttarakhand region, and landslides and so on. So what we have to understand is it's Krishna he withholds or gives. So clearly he's annoyed, and people, environmentalists of um, religious bent of mind will say that Mother Earth is angry and nature is hitting back because we are stripping her out of her greed and blasting mines and just the construction boom and making money and so on. So she is hitting back. Now here, because it is in Krishna is behind all of these. That's what we are being told, and at his will or upon his command, any of these things happen. By contrast, I was reading today. This is a material kind of example. I was reading how one of the grandsons of Mahatma Gandhi, that is Rajmohan Gandhi, several. So Rajmohan Gandhi is an elderly man now, and he was at some interview, and basically it seems somewhere in the middle of the interview, he got very emotional and broke down and started to weep about. He wasn't defending his own grandfather. He was saying the kind of scurrilous stories that are deliberately being spread about Nehru. And he went on to say Nehru was a great lover of the Himalayas. At least that's what he professed all the time. He would love to travel in those parts. His own sister, what's her name? That lady with um, something
Uh,
Pandit, that Pandit lady with she used to have thick gray hair. What Pandit?
Indira Gandhi? No, no, no.
No, Indira Gandhi is his daughter. No, Nehru's sisters. He had a very powerful kind of family behind him. Anyway, they settled in different parts of Uttarakhand, Kausani, Kasauli in Himachal Pradesh. They loved that area, and they had the money, though they were originally born and brought up in Allahabad, but originally Kashmiris who hardly had any home there. Anyway, and Nehru is known to have said, to always have professed love for the Himalayas. He liked to go there and so on. So this person who's speaking, Rajmohan Gandhi, says it's one thing you don't like his policies, you want to hold him responsible for the Indo-Pak war, the Indo-China war, that he was kind of basically napping or sleeping. He was not alert, and it may all be true that he was living in a idealistic world, and he didn't assess the Chinese for what they were, and he was busy saying Indochina, bye bye, and there they were attacking across the border. That's all true. He said you can attack him for his policies, you can criticize him, but these scurrilous and false stories that are being spread. I've also heard some of these stories that basically he was a Muslim and not an Indian. I mean, they stop you in certain parts, certain kind of, and they keep telling you all this. That it's just very unfair, and he began to cry. and that the silence from the top, silence from the people who ought to be correcting this mischief is even more worrying. All right. And he went on to say the Himalayas that Nehru loved so much, they won't keep quiet. They will raise objections or they will hit back in some way. So the idea he's trying to convey is, if someone is very attached to something, even if it is in the form of some mountains, who are silent and who are apparently, it seems, lifeless, and who don't normally move, that he is saying that even they will object, because Nehru was always very loyal to the Himalayas. And so how much more is that the case when a personality like the Supreme Personality Krishna is responsible, as you've read in the Bhagavatam, creating these mountains, creating the rains, creating the heat, creating the, so he can, if he is upset or annoyed about something, about the way mankind is misusing the facilities given, it's very easy for him to withhold the rain, to send excess rain when it's not required, to cause devastation, to take man by surprise by sending these forces when they least expect it. So Krishna is driving home the point that he is behind everything, that he is the source of everything and he is behind everything. Nehru's sister was Vijay Lakshmi Pandit.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that was her name, and she had her own home somewhere in Kausani or one of those Uttarakhand places. Anyway, uh, uh, 20th verse. We are now getting back into the philosophical verses, because until now these were descriptive about the his glories. You know, that I am this and I am that, Lord
Mm.
Krishna. Now we are coming to, there's more philosophy coming. Okay, shall we chant this together?
Yeah.
Traividyamam
Traividyam mam somapa
Somapa. Oh no,
bhuta
this will go differently,
somapa.
because it's not
Okay.
like the others.
Oh, they have one word. So Traividyamam somapa bhuta papa. Is it like that? Or
No, this has a different meter. When some of these come, 1 minute. Traividyamam Somapa Bhuta Papa Yajnarishtava Swargatim Prarthayante Te. No, this doesn't work like that. All right, we just have to read this, because this has a different meter, some of these verses. Because if you see, the earlier ones were just 2 lines, so it
Hmm.
was easier. Now it is 4 lines. Wait.
Should we just chant it and just like even if it's out of the tune also? Is it
No, it's possible. Then this will take the Bhagavatam meter, which goes like this. Just give me a minute.
okay?
Rai, Rai, Rai Vidyamam Soma Paputa Papa Yajnari Swaswargatim Prarthyante. Okay, no. I'm sorry, I'm not up to this. So, like you said, we'll just chant it even if you don't get the correct the meter.
Yeah. Traividyamam
Traividyam
somapa
Soma
bhuta papa Yagner Ishtava Swargati
Swargatim
Parartayante Te Punyam Asadya Surendra Lokam Ashnanti Divyandi Divi Deva Bhuvan.
Bhogan, Deva Bhogan. Okay,
Okay.
again. Traividya
Traividyamam
Mamso
Somapa Bhuta Papa
Bhutapa
Yagner
Yajnairishva
Ishtava Swargatim
Sarvatim
Prartayante
Prayante
Te Punyam Asadya Surendralokam Ashnanti Divyan Divi Deva Bhogan
Okay, good. Once more. Traividya
Traividyamam Soma Paputa Papa Yagne Ishva
Yajnairishva
Swargatim
Sarvatim
Prartayante Te
Prayante
Punyam Asadya Surendra Lokam Ashnanti Divyan Divi Deva Bhogan.
Okay, translation. Please read.
Those who study the Vedas and drink the Soma juice, seeking the heavenly planets, worship me indirectly. Purified of sinful reactions, they take birth on the pious heavenly planet of Indra, where they enjoy godly delights.
All right. those who now this actually this those who study the Vedas, because the major portion of the Vedas, it is thousands and thousands of verses, are telling you how to enjoy according to rules, and then get the fruits by making it to the heavenly planets, where soma juice is something delicious and grants something close to immortality, and that's available on the moon planet or Chandraloka. Those who study the Vedas and drink the soma juice, seeking the heavenly planets, worship me indirectly. Where do they go? Purify the sinful reactions. They take birth on the pious heavenly planet of Indra, that is Indraloka, where they enjoy godly delights. So, the major portion of the Vedas gives people this as a goal. It's only towards the end of the Vedas that what are called the Upanishadic section of the Vedas, where some more information is given about how to get out once and for all of this cycle of birth and death. Now, let's take the second sentence. Purify the sinful reactions, they take birth on the pious heavenly planet of Indra or Indraloka, where they enjoy godly delights. Okay, what might go wrong, say, once you or I reach Indraloka? What is a shortcoming there? Let's say we make it our business to do everything properly and study the Vedas and do all the yagyas and pujas and live a pious and moral life and make it to Indraloka. What actually is futile about making it to Indraloka? Just think back about all the stories you've read in the Bhagavatam which might be
Hmm.
involving Indra, and you will get your clue.
So you'll enjoy all the godly opulences of that abode, and then whatever you can imagine, like pleasure that will pleasure the senses, you will probably enjoy in that place. And then
Yeah,
after, but ultimately you will again come down back to um, the
material,
earthly,
material
the
world.
earth, or the material earthly realm, or so you'll again come back down, and then you'll have to, like the story of, I mean, there's a story in the Bhagavad Gita where I think one of the kings, I mean, it's part of the Mahabharata actually. It's like
Yeah,
where
go
one of the
on.
kings is like, I don't know the name of the king, but he's like cursed in, he's one of those like these beings in Indra's planet or whatever, and he gets cursed by somebody to become a snake, and Yudhishthira like comes upon him, like Yudhishthira, like at
Right,
some
right,
point of the story,
right.
like he the snake is, I think, almost eaten up. I think it was Bhishma, or was it, who was it? I think it was Arjuna. Yeah, I think the snake was almost eating up Arjuna,
Uh-huh.
and in that moment, like I think
A
when
princess? Yeah, go on.
I don't know. I think no, the snake was eating up Arjuna, but then like so Yudhishthira was there, and Yudhishthira was basically like something he negotiated with the snake, and the snake was like impressed with him, and then the snake let him go, let Arjuna go or something. I'm not.
Oh,
It was something like that. Yeah, and actually, I'm not sure where I read it, but I remember. I don't know why, but I remember this story from
but
somewhere.
okay, but isn't there one where the
Yeah,
snake
there's
reveals its true identity, and then there is a Naga princess whom one of the wives of
yeah,
Arjuna?
yeah, yeah. That's
Different
another.
one?
That is like when Arjuna leaves. Like he's like, there's that thing, right? Like where if he in that 1 year where Draupadi has to spend 1 year with each of the Pandavas. So in
Right.
that one of the years, there's this rule that if one of the Pandavas goes and like disturbs them at any of that one point in that 1 year while they are in a sort of romantic mood or whatever,
Yeah, yeah.
then they'll be banished away. So in that time, so so he purposely does this because he wants to, in one sense, kind of leave. So he kind of does this purposely and he leaves. And as he's going, he goes to this that Manipur side or that northeast. I mean,
Ah, right,
it's
right.
described
That's
that he
the
goes there. He goes
Manipur.
there, and then he goes, and as he's going across the lake, there's this like the celestial being or whatever. She's very captivated by him, and so she takes the form of this snake or something to try to like
Seduce
bite
him.
him,
Yeah,
seduce
yeah.
him or something. Yeah, to bring him to this. There's yeah, that's I forgot the name of that the lady though. What is the name of the lady?
Right. Never mind. Yeah, go
Yeah.
on. So
So
that's
yeah, So the other one was basically there was I'm not sure like because this was somewhere this was like closer to before the battle but somewhat closer like they're all like going to find like they're all I think they found Arjuna's like returned from Indra's abode and he's like met up with everybody and they're all in one sense, they're still going through various pilgrimage sites and they're on their way back. They're all those 13 years are almost over.
Right.
In that period, somewhere like in some part of the story, I remember that there was a snake that there was a person who was cursed who was cursed. He was a demigod, or celestial being, or something. And he fell down, and the curse was that Yudhishthira would have to come and relieve him, and then he would be sent back into
All right.
the heavenly board. So
Okay. All right.
he
So
was
how
he
does
was
this?
yeah. Yeah, so he was basically enjoying all kinds of opulences in this thing. And
Uh-huh.
then yeah, so then he did something that kind of I think made some sage in that realm angry or something. I'm not sure, I'm actually butchering the story because I'm not saying it correctly and all that, but
All
I
right.
just know that this but the idea is that what I mean if you ideas that if you these heavenly planets where such as the in this verse where they describe the planet of Indra, it's always
Yeah.
described as like even when Arjuna was had to go to Indra's planet
Uh-huh.
and stay there for like I think it's considered 5 years in that planet's period and all that. It describes all kinds of opulence are there, like you have all these dancing girls and you have these musical instruments being played. People are drinking soma juice and all kinds of things are going on there.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever but everything is done in a mode of in a good in a slightly in a mode of goodness sort of way.
Right.
But whatever kind of pleasure that you could want is there, but the ultimate thing is that like even Indra's planet has like a limit to when you will be there till, and eventually like that will also go, and you'll come back down to earth, and then you'll have to again be born again, basically like
In the
something
material.
like
All right.
that.
An additional point that why it is not such an attractive place to go to is the material world, or our, especially in Kali Yuga, it's considered to be a place where there's always we are disturbed. Therefore, this famous Bhagavatam verse, Kalau asmin yuge janaha manda sumanda matayo manda bhagyahi upadrita. This key word is upadrita, or very disturbed, always disturbed. Now, because they're not only Manda Sumanda Matayo, Manda, they are dull headed. In Satya Yuga, you just recite a shloka once and the person would get it forever. Here, I mean, we have to struggle so much to learn even a single shloka. There, they could, the entire Vedas apparently would register in their brain if they heard it once. But Manda, Sumanda, and Matayo also, they're lazy, they are ill fated, they short lived. Manda Bhagya, messed up Bhagya or destiny. Upadrita is crucial here because it means you're always disturbed. And if you look at even our situation, though Kali Yuga is not yet very advanced, and nobody seems to have any peace. And what to talk of after COVID? I mean, even those who were relatively peaceful are also afflicted in some way or another. Now, the problem with Indra Loka is, in a different way, there is never any peace there because Indra becomes jealous and insecure of kings that are doing so well on the material planet that they may in some way outdo him and he may lose his position. So he starts making disturbances. Then he gives in to certain, if you like, weaknesses that cause big issues. Like he got attracted to
Like
Ahalya. Remember?
there's a story of story, yeah. There's also that story, famous story in the Bhagavatam, no, with King Pa- Partha, no, it's that story where um
You
that
mean the
100 yeah that 100 Ashwamedha, that horse sacrifice, that there's a king no
right, right, right?
who's
You're
performing.
talking.
He
You
steals
are
a
talking.
horse from that king and all. That king is going to do 100 sacrifices, horse sacrifices, and he
Right?
steals
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
hundred. What is this king's name?
I don't recall it now, but I know the story because
Yeah,
this
and
is
that
what.
he gets jealous. He gets
That's
jealous
right.
there.
He gets
He gets
insecure
jealous.
that his position in Indraloka will be usurped by some highly successful king who does these things and then deposes him. And also the whole background to the Govardhan Lila or the Govardhan
Yeah,
Puja
Govardhan Lila.
Lila. Govardhan Puja is coming up now. It's coming 2 days after Diwali. Basically, is because Indra got so upset that the Vrajavasis living in that Govardhan area were advised by little Krishna to not bother with worshipping their family deity in Indradev and instead to worship him. So Indradev gets furious and starts sending torrential rain, and that's when this child Krishna lifts the Govardhan mountain to give shelter to those Vrajavasis on his little finger. So you have these kind of disturbances in Indra Loka. So someone who's tried very hard to qualify himself or herself to get there is then going to find that here also there are disturbances. There's warfare, there's jealousy, there's, and then you can get caught in between. So therefore, Indra Loka is not such a great place to go to. Now, if you look at the first sentence in this verse that we just read, the translation,
That the name of that king was King Prithu.
Prithu. Okay.
Prithu Maharaj. That was the
Prithu
story.
Maharaj. All right. Thank you. Okay.
So the purport is, yeah, the word Trividya refers to the three Vedas, Sama,
Yeah.
Yajur, and Rig. A Brahmana has studied these three Vedas. Okay, the Brahmana who has studied these three Vedas is called a Trivedi. Anyone who is very much attached to knowledge derived from these three Vedas is respected in society. Unfortunately, there are many great scholars of the Vedas who do not know that the ultimate purport of studying them. Therefore, Krishna herein declares himself to be the ultimate goal of the Trivedis. Actually, Trivedis take shelter under the lotus feet of Krishna and engage in pure devotional service, satisfied the Lord. Devotional service begins with the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra and side by side trying to understand Krishna and truth. Firstly, those who are simply official students of the Vedas become more interested in offering sacrifices to the different demigods like Indra and Chandra. By such endeavor, the worshippers of different demigods are certainly purified of the contamination of the lower qualities of nature and are thereby elevated to the higher planetary systems or heavenly planets known as Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, etc. Once situated on those higher planetary systems, one can satisfy senses hundreds of thousands of times better than on this planet.
Okay, just a couple of comments here. This, what we just read of Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, this is actually the destination of the Ashtanga yogis. Those Ashtanga yogis who do it all right and exit from the top of their head. Question gets asked, where do they want to go? Because they are right now not on the bhakti path. They want to go to those planets where there are other great Ashtanga yogis practicing peacefully in completely favorable circumstances, and they want to just carry on because they've developed so much taste for this kind of holding your breath internally and reversing the direction of the flow of the air, that they finally manage to exit through the top of the skull, what is called Kundalini yoga or Kundalini
Kundalini
rising.
Yoga, yeah.
That's right. And then where do they go? They go to these higher planets like Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, where there are no disturbances, and you have Brigu and so many other yogis, so that they can carry on for another, I don't know how many thousands of years. But I want to draw your attention to the first sentence in the translation, where they talk of those who study the Vedas and drink the Soma juice, seeking the heavenly planets, worship me indirectly. So the Soma juice is basically available only in Chandra Loka or the moon planet. We now heard about Indra Loka, we had a discussion, the futility of going there. We talked about Marloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, which is the favored destination of the Ashtanga yogis, so the Dhyana yogis. And now we are talking about this Soma juice is always Chandra Loka or the moon planet. Now, the thing about this Soma juice and the moon planet, Srila Prabhupada's guru was an individual called Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. Actually, he has been to Trivandrum on one of his tours because he came wherever Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had come. So he was a fierce preacher, and in Bengal the problem at that time was, because imagine if because Bhakti Siddhanta had passed away by 1922 or 1929. 1922 is when when Srila Prabhupada meets him for the first time, and 7 years later Bhakti Siddhanta is not here any longer. So at that period of Bengal's history, the original Brahmins had come under the influence of the Brahmo Samaj, which was going out of its way to reject all the Vedas and Vedic rituals as just bogus and hocus pocus, and they were swinging to the other extreme. they were swinging to Raja Ram Mohan Rai and so on, to embrace Western practice. Those who were strictly vegetarian were deliberately opening up their kitchen and experimenting with non-veg. Initially feeling revulsion because they saw this as a path for advancement. Those who had, like you say, had a parampara or history of studying the Vedas were throwing all that out and saying, we believe in science and scientific advancement. We want to go the way the Western civilization has gone. So that was the kind of the plight of Bengal at that time. And Bhaktisiddhanta could not um, really make that much of an impact with those born Brahmins or born into the culture of studying the Vedas, because they were rebelling and revolting. So he is supposed to have made a declaration that after he passed away, rather than go back to Krishna's world, which because of his extreme advancement and his position, he had a right to, he would make it a point to go to Chandra Loka there to catch those Brahmins born earlier before the Brahma Samaj, the Brahmo movement and everything. The original, the Brahmins who struggled and somehow made it to Chandra Loka because they didn't know of a higher goal than this. That he would go and position himself in Chandra Loka to catch them and preach to them there. He's supposed to have said this in a very, not as a joke or not in a light way, that he was not interested in going back to, even if he had the option to go back to Krishna Loka and to Goloka, that he wanted to continue. He was such a fierce preacher that he wanted to continue with his preaching. And those people who had escaped him in Bengal, the original Trivedis and the Dvivedis and the Bhattacharyas and the Banerjees and so on, who had, one lot of them had escaped him because they had taken to this westernization. But there was a whole lot who were, there, these people's fathers who had also escaped him because they headed for Chandraloka by doing all their austerities. He would get there and catch them there. That was the kind of, how do you say, dynamic preacher he was. Like they escape him here, he will catch them at the other end. So much Jews, immediately it should mean Chandraloka or the moon planet. We are
There's
also
also
like,
that
yeah.
there's that pastime of even in Krishna and like when he's with the cowherd boys and all that. There's a pastime, right, where that Tenakasura, where
Then yeah, demon.
they're the donkey demon when I mean Indra also comes during that in that pastime and uh, these demons are trying to collect some juice. I don't know if it is soma juice. Was it
No,
soma
it
juice
is
or what is
date
it?
palm. It is a particular kind of date palm forest where
Oh,
Krishna and Balaram go to try to get those fruits. And then these demons have like created so much havoc, they're prevented. And that's when it is a type of date palm. I have the illustration, the painting, and it's like a pastime I like a lot.
oh,
It's Dhenukasura. That's not the one. That doesn't involve Indra. But Indra comes in the churning of the Milky Ocean, in the Mohini Murti, Leela. All this Indra very much appears. Okay. So next verse, please. The 21st verse.
yeah. So okay, 21st, huh?
Tetam, tetam,
Tetam Tetam bhuktva swargalokam vishalam
shine,
Shine punye martya lokam
lokam
vishanti
vishanti,
evam trai dharmam prapanna gata gatam kama kama labante
tetam,
tetam
uktva,
bhuktva swargalokam
lokam vishal,
vishalam
shine,
shine punye martya lokam
lokam vishanti,
vishanti evam trai dharmam prapanna Gata gatam kama kama labante
again.
etam bhuktva
Uktva,
swargalokam vishalam shine
shine,
pune martyalokam vishanti evam trayi dharma anupapanna gata gatam kama
lokam.
kama labante.
Okay. Translation.
When they have thus enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure, and the results of their pious activities are exhausted, they return to this mortal planet again. Those who seek sense enjoyment by adhering to the principles of the three Vedas achieve only repeat birth and death.
Okay, so here this Shine Punye Martya Lokam Vishanti. This is like the second line here in the transliteration. Shine punya, once it gets exhausted. What gets exhausted? The punya or the pious acts. Marti lokam, back to the mortal world, the world of death. Vishanti, they fall down. So when they have thus enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure and the results of their pious activities are exhausted, they return to this mortal planet again. Thus, those who seek sense enjoyment by adhering to the principles of the three Vedas achieve only repeated birth and death. Two things. The same what is being described here in the 9th chapter was already hinted at as early as the 2nd chapter. Try and find the verse which says, Ya imam pushpitam vacham. Pushpitam, those who are attracted by the flowery language of the Vedas. It starts like that in the 2nd chapter. So early on, this has been hinted at. I'll just get it for you quickly by
Imam Pushpitam. Could you just repeat that verse again? What is it?
yeah, it is 42 43 of the 2nd chapter. Go to 42 and Ya imam pushpitam vacham. Those who are attracted by the flowery language of the Vedas.
This one. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right?
Imam Pushpitam. Okay.
Yeah, just see. So something that he is hinted at as early as the 2nd chapter, it's now being elaborated on the 9th chapter, just to show you there is continuity of one kind. Even if it is not symmetrical, there is continuity in the Bhagavad Gita. Now 2.42 and 43, what he is saying here is, those who are attracted by the flowery language, yeah, 42, 43, read the translation.
So, men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, result in good births, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life, they say that there is nothing more than this.
All right. So men of small knowledge, meaning basically men of low intelligence. They are born into pious backgrounds and they do their duties very nicely, but their goal or understanding is limited. So they are attached to the flowery words of the Vedas. Why do the Vedas words sound flowery? Very attractive, nice smell to it, nice scent to it. Because it's talking of how you can enjoy in this life. You please the demigods and you do all the yagyas, everything properly, and don't aim for anything higher. You are given results right here. And then after death, you can go to one of the planets where some more enjoyment is possible. So that is limited intelligence, because they don't get this point that they will land back here when their pious credit is over in the heavenly planets. So as early as the 2nd chapter, this has been hinted at. And now when we go back to the 9th chapter, verse 21, which we just read, what's being given here, I mean, in the last class, we talked about this analogy that Prabhupada comes up with in the purport of why should we take the staircase when we can take an elevator and get to the top. We started today's class and discussion with this, and you were posing certain correct, like challenging points that, and we had discussed it. Here, what the analogy that is given is of a Ferris wheel. You've been, I don't know about the circus, but you go to some of these fairs or
Uh,
carnivals, thing that
you'll
goes
get a
round.
wheel. Yeah, yeah. You'll
Yeah, what is it called? A giant wheel? Giant
uh,
wheel?
I think Ferris wheel. No, not was it Ferris wheel only? I think.
Yeah, here he's using
Uh,
the word Ferris wheel. And nowadays, like when we grew up, I think it was just called a giant wheel. It's not the merry-go-round, because that goes like this, right? That merry-go-round goes like you sit on little donkey chairs, on horse carts chairs, and it just goes round, round, left to right. But the Ferris
yeah,
wheel is more, yeah, that one. That is more
this one.
frightening. Yeah, that's more scary, because you go up in the sky and then you come right down.
This one.
That's right. That's right. That's the one
Okay.
with bucket seats. And from time to time, you hear of accidents and tragedies where, the current fails and somebody gets thrown out because of the shock of the wheel stopping. But here, the Jiva's journey from the higher planets to the lower planets, back to the higher planets, is very appropriately compared to the Ferris wheel. Sometimes you're high up there and then you're back again in one of the lower planets. Sometimes you're in a very high and good position and then you're back again in this miserable world with bad karma and suffering and so on. So the purport: one who is promoted to the higher planetary systems enjoys a longer duration of life and better facilities for sense enjoyment. Yet one is not allowed to stay there forever. One is again sent back to this earth upon finishing the resultant fruits of pious activities. He who has not attained perfection of knowledge, as indicated in the Vedanta Sutra, Janmadhyasya Yata, or in other words, he who fails to understand Krishna, the cause of all causes, becomes baffled about achieving the ultimate goal of life and is thus subjected to the routine of being promoted to the higher planets and again coming down, as if situated on a Ferris wheel which sometimes goes up and sometimes comes down. The purport is that instead of being elevated to the spiritual world from which there is no longer any possibility of coming down, one simply revolves in the cycle of birth and death on higher and lower planetary systems. One should better take to the spiritual world to enjoy an eternal life full of bliss and knowledge and never return to this miserable material existence. In the middle of all this Ferris wheel going up and down, remember, if a jiva is stuck for many, many, many lifetimes, there is also the time when Mahavishnu closes down all creation and the material universes absorbs the material universes and planets into his system, in which during that long period or the sleep and the night of Mahavishnu, the jiva is just suspended in time. I don't know to what extent the jiva's conscious is suspended time, but it's like a terrible situation. One of the shastras narrates it's like being caught between two big rocks. If you're in a fast flowing river, you start to get washed away. It's nice, you get caught between two rocks, but you can't get out. The river is gushing and
Hmm.
rushing and people are trying to help you, but we don't know which is worse, whether to have got washed away and then somehow come to some shore, or whether to be stuck and not be able to get out of one zone, and people are not able to get you out of the two rocks because the flow or the speed of the river is it's so fast that they can't negotiate the river and come and pull you out, nor can they blast or break the rocks. So it is like that. If the jiva is suspended in time, it's a horrible situation. And the acharyas write about this, that we've already been through all this. That's why we are here today, at least talking about the Supreme Lord. We've been through it, and therefore we must make the most of whatever opportunity we get to try and hasten up or hurry up our chances of getting out of the cycle of birth and death and developing really loving relationships and a very good destination. Instead of being stuck on the Ferris wheel and instead of being stuck between two rocks and so on. Okay. Now, this I think is one of your favorite verses, right?
Yeah, the
Ananyas,
22nd.
that you've been waiting a
Yes.
long time to come to this.
Yeah, I say it every day, but yeah, like I like going. I always like going back to this verse. It's like
I
it's
see.
nice verse.
Okay, then you
So
chant it, yeah.
Ananyasya chintayanto mam ye jana
Ananye
parayupasate tesham
Tesham
nitya yuktanam
Yoga
yogakshemam vahamayam
again.
Ananyasya
Ananyam
chintayanto
Chintayanto
mam
Ye
ye
Jana
jana parayupasate tesham nitya yuktanam yogakshemam
Yogakshemam Vahamyam
vahamayam
again.
Ananyasya chintayanto
Chintayanto
mam ये
Ye
जना
Jana
पर्युपासते तेषां
Tesham
नित्ययुक्तानां
Yoga.
योगक्षेमं वहामयम्.
Okay, translation please.
So, but those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have.
Okay, the purport.
One who is unable to live for a moment without Krishna consciousness cannot but think of Krishna 24 hours a day. But being engaged in devotional service by hearing, chanting, remembering, offering prayers, worshipping, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, rendering other services, cultivating friendship, and surrendering fully to the Lord. Such activities are all auspicious and full of spiritual potencies, which make the devotee perfect in self-realization, so that his only desire is to achieve the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such a devotee undoubtedly approaches the Lord without difficulty. This is called yoga. By the mercy of the Lord, such a devotee never comes back to this material condition of life. Shema refers to the merciful protection of the Lord. The Lord helps the devotee to achieve Krishna consciousness by yoga. And when he becomes fully Krishna conscious, the Lord protects him from falling down to a miserable conditioned life.
Okay, so the beginning, the first few sentences in this purport are talking about the really advanced devotee who cannot, unable to live even for a moment without Krishna consciousness, cannot but think of Krishna 24 hours a day, being engaged in devotion service by hearing, chanting, remembering, and so on. And the story that is usually told is, do you remember this writer of, who scratched out when he was translating the Bhagavad Gita? He said, this particular verse, the writer of, not in Pandharpur, a great devotee, um, he, not Ajamila, not anyway, one of the great devotees of North India, not Tukaram. Um, okay, the name will come. I should have revised this. But basically, when he was translating and he came to this, he had some doubt. So, but those who always worship me with it, I carry what they lack, and I preserve what they have. So he slashed out the I,
Wow.
because he couldn't believe. He had this slight doubt that Krishna will personally do this. He slashed out the I and he translated it in a kind of third person, impersonal mood, saying that they will be somehow given what they lack and what they need to have preserved will be preserved. Then he's supposed to have gone for a bath, and when he comes back, he finds the story. What is that? About three. He goes for a bath and comes back, and he has 3 slash marks on his back. And
Whoa.
meanwhile, his wife, who is a simple-minded devotee, they were hard up for. Is it? Uh, no, who is the great devotee in Pandharpur? What is the name of that great devotee, that bhakta in Pandharpur, for whom Krishna is supposed to have put the brick? Not Panduranga, not Panduranga. Vitala. Okay, we look this up on Google. But basically, what happens is that the story that is told is that the lady says, no, somebody had come in his absence and corrected this. Corrected
Pundalik.
what?
Pundalik.
Pundarik. No, I don't think this fits with the story I'm saying. But basically, they were an impoverished family, and he went to have his regular Yamuna Snan or Ganga Snan. But by the time he bathed and came back, he saw that someone had corrected what he had slashed out. Somebody had come and corrected. So he asked his wife, who is not even a scholar or educated, and said, "Why did you mess with what I was translating?" And she said, "I didn't do anything." So he was puzzled, and he said, "Who has been here in my absence?" And they were, as I said, with hardly any food to cook, but still somehow sticking on to their worship. And he said, "Well, 2 boys came and delivered some food and some provisions, and I'm cooking with that." So in a flash, he got it. That basically Krishna and Balaram, or Krishna and one of his Gopas, had come to produce food for the lady of his wife of simple worship, and meanwhile correct him because he had doubted. And meanwhile, there's another story which says that he gets, wherever he had slashed, like say he had slashed in 2-3 places, he gets 3 slash marks on his back to show that Krishna is not pleased at all by this doubting. So, meaning the story goes to convey the point that he actually personally intervenes in the lives of devotees when they lack something. May not be in the form of food or something so obvious. Maybe they are really searching desperately for a solution. They're in a bad hole or bad corner, and he never forgets them once they have chanted his name even once sincerely or done a little service for him, he never forgets that. So he provides what they lack and he preserves what they have. This is the message. And the second half of this purport is talking about not such an advanced devotee, which is dependent on the mercy of the Lord. Because see, it says here,
Hmm.
such activities earlier, in the middle of the purport, it says such activities are all auspicious and full of spiritual potencies, which
Potencies.
make the devotee perfect in self-realization, so that his only desire is to achieve the association of the Supreme Personality. Okay, such a devotee undoubtedly approaches the Lord without difficulty. That is called yoga. By the mercy of the Lord, such a devotee never comes back to this material condition of life. Kshema refers to the merciful protection of the Lord. The Lord helps the devotee to achieve Krishna consciousness by yoga, and when he becomes fully Krishna conscious, the Lord protects him from falling down to a miserable condition life. Now, taking just the word Shema, or here translated as the mercy of the Lord, by the mercy of the Lord, uh, that is for us ordinary devotees. We are not yet there, and sometimes we doubt, and we are in desperate situations, but he never forgets us. To just tell a small anecdote that I was hearing earlier today, Srila Prabhupada, amongst his disciples, he had one of his foremost disciples, now not there any longer. He died in an accident around the time I joined. Was a sannyasi called Tamala Krishna Goswami. Very capable manager, educated, very dynamic, and
He's the this thing. What is that?
American.
The guru of that Kastuba Prabhu.
I see. Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah.
I
He's
see.
the he's the guru of that Kastuba Prabhu. So he keeps
Okay.
talking about Tamal Krishna Goswami
I see.
in the podcast and all that. He'll say like that he was very strict. Like he was a very strict kind of guru,
Right,
but
right.
he was very like fair. Like he was very fair. Like in the fair in the sense that he was very
Just.
he just and things like that. But he was very strict when it came to um, doing all just like executing all kinds of activities and all that. He was very
Right, right.
that strict, but he's very nice and all that. They were all like he
Right,
keeps
right, yeah. So he was extremely joined at a young age, educated and so on. He was extremely close to Prabhupada. He was practically the only one of the Prabhupada's disciples from that early time who dared to take liberties with Srila Prabhupada. He would dare. I mean, if he wanted something and Prabhupada was not granting it, he would take the liberty of just fasting and refusing to eat till Srila Prabhupada would come out and say, okay, okay, I will give you, you want this assignment, you want to go to that part of the world, you want to do book distribution, all right, go. Nobody else dared to disobey Srila Prabhupada. But he was so strongly situated in his connection with Srila Prabhupada, and he was chastised heavily many times. So he was telling two stories today. The mercy of the Supreme Lord, and which comes through the mercy of the spiritual master. So one story was how in those early days when they were trying to collect money to build the Vrindavan temple, this was, we are talking of the late 70s, mid 70s. They were collecting in Mumbai because the rich people were all in Mumbai, not in Vrindavan. And that a taxi driver who was a Sikh or a Sardarji by birth, he got initiated by Srila Prabhupada. His name was Sri Chaitya Guru or Sri Chaitya Das or something. Sri Chaitya was a driver. He took the role of the driver, driving around Tamal Krishna Maharaj, Giriraj Swami, who were young then, very young people, who were representing Srila Prabhupada and going to life members in Mumbai to collect money for the Vrindavan temple. Many, many rich Vaishnava Gujaratis are willing to pitch in. Some stage, this Sikh driver, disciple of Srila Prabhupada, decided he wants to kind of go away from the movement and explore spirituality on his own. So because this Chaitya Guru had been sent as a driver often on his own to collect the money promised by life members trusted this guy. So when he went away, Tamal Krishna Maharaj told Srila Prabhupada, I think we should warn our life members that this guy is no longer with us. Because supposing he's gone away, he can do anything. They trust him. He can go and say, we are still collecting, and then he can go off with that money. This has happened in ISKCON in different parts. So Srila Prabhupada said, no, leave it. Then they came to know that this Chaitya Guru, Sikh Sardarji disciple, had joined up with a kind of bhogi yogi, real fraud, and was living on Juhu beach. in some kind of shanty tent or whatever, and learning from this Bhogi Yogi the art of passing a coin from one ear and bringing out through the other ear. By doing this, you can impress a lot of people. They throw money into your bowl or whatever, and then you can do this miracle, sort of miracle. So then Tamarakrishna Maharaj said, this really is the limit. It is not only a bad name for us. This obviously he's tied up with a complete fraud, the Bhogi Yogi, and now together they are going to join hands and do all these kind of cheap tricks. And definitely he might go back to our life members. Prabhupada, please, we should write a note and put out some kind of warning. So Srila Prabhupada said, no, you have no idea about the mercy of the Supreme Lord. You have no clue at all. He will come back. If even once or a few days he has served the Supreme Lord and served a Guru coming in that line sincerely, the Lord never forgets that. And apparently, sure enough, this Sri Chaitya Guru came back and served. And even before this interview, Tamal Maharaj had been in touch with him. So that was one example, that this mercy of the Lord, that we have no clue at all, that he forgives so much, and he even someone goes off completely off that track. The other thing that we wanted to talk about is the mercy of the Guru, shown by the Guru towards the disciple. There was a long drawn out and most interesting fight, legal and verbal and physical, to get hold of the land on which the Jew ISKCON temple today stands. And surprisingly, the land actually belonged to a Mr. Nair from Kerala.
Yeah.
Somehow he had. So that it went through different stages, and different kind of cheating was tried on one side, and these people tried to out cheat. Eventually, when a contract had been signed, these people, that is Samal Krishna Maharaj, was put in charge of basically getting the Juhu land and also the Mayapur land, initial early days. So the lawyers on this side were actually in collaboration with the crooked lawyers of the Mr. Nair. That these innocent Westerners, naive, not knowing how the Indian system works, didn't know all this. So after a contract had been signed, these people's lawyers poked many holes in the contract and said, no, you should cancel this contract. And foolishly, uh, this Tamal Krishna Maharaj, Giriraj Swami, went ahead and cancelled without Prabhupada coming to know, because Prabhupada is in some other city. So Prabhupada called. One day, those days there was no regular landline. Anyway, he called, and Tamala Krishna went and said, I have some good news. The contract we signed was actually full of lot of legal loopholes. It was pointed out by our lawyers, and I have cancelled the contract. And Prabhupada was aghast. Prabhupada immediately knew what had happened. That the crooked Indian lawyers here were actually completely in the pay of the crooked, that the other side, and a good contract had been signed somehow, and now they were getting out of it. So Prabhupada said, for 1 month after that, every time any visitor came, devotee, disciple, life member,
Yeah.
yeah,
Then that book, autobiography is there. It's mentioned in that. The
right.
story is there, yeah.
Okay. Tamala Krishna Maharaj was his personal servant at that time.
Yeah.
Srila Prabhupada would call Tamala Krishna Maharaj and said, here, just look. This is Tamala. This is a stupid and foolish boy who went and cancelled a contract that we had signed with great difficulty. Again, next person, next day. This is the foolish boy who foolishly cancelled the contract that. So Tamala Krishna Maharaj says, but he never felt that Srila Prabhupada's love for him had diminished in any way. When chastisement was due, he really gave it. Because Srila Prabhupada didn't kick him out and say, you stupid idiot and everything. He just drove home the point that you're so naive that you've gone and fallen into the trap of these
Is
people.
actually, if you read the Chaitanya Charitamrita also, you get all these different stories of even like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and
Uh-huh.
his interactions with all the different types of devotees that are there, no? That they keep coming. And there's a story of him and Vallabha Bhatta,
Yeah,
of
yeah.
him and somewhat similar but little different. Like not yeah, Vallabha Bhatta only. Like Vallabha Bhatta is he has like he's fully enamored by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but at the same time like he wants to establish some kind of like importance in the movement, so he tries to make a commentary on the Bhagavatam,
That's
and
right.
Chaitanya
Yeah.
Mahaprabhu is not at all impressed with it. And I mean, he says that there's already a commentary. He kind of says that that this is what everybody's following. There's some commentary written by this famous person, and then Vallabha Bhatta comes and tries to refute that person also. that
Right.
person's commentary. I forgot the name of that famous writer. I don't know if you know that person, but and then he tries to refuse it, but then
Sridhar
Chaitanya,
Maharaj. Sridhar, the
Sridhar,
famous
yeah,
Sridhar
Sridhar.
Maharaj. Yeah.
Sridhar, yeah. He tries to refute him, but then again, Chaitanya was like, you don't know the essence of the ecstatic love of Godhead, and
Yeah.
it's like this. Your idea is completely beyond. It's beyond all what you think about. Sridhar Maharaj is like an exalted devotee who has the highest level of ecstatic love, and this and that, and he's like, you're not even on that level, and so basically he tells him all this, and then he gets so embarrassed because he thought like he's trying to impress Chaitanya Maharaj, trying to impress, and
Right.
it had the reverse result. Everybody
Uh-huh.
said Chaitanya Maharaj was like, nobody will read your book, and
Uh-huh.
nobody read his book, like nobody read his commentary, nobody listened to what he said, and so in the end, like he just after all the whole episode, he came and then he touched his feet and said, and then said like, I'm sorry for but it was my false ego that led me to this whole thing. And
Right.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu tells him that, he doesn't chastise him at that time. He doesn't say that, oh no,
Yeah, yeah.
he never told him like get out and all. He used to keep coming back and meeting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu during that entire period. And
Uh-huh.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't say anything. And then at the end, he said that, yeah, there was this false pride that you did have. But,
Mm,
if you chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra every day, everything will be fine. So it
right,
was
right.
like that. It was like that basically.
Yeah, absolutely. It's because the guru has to purify, he has to chastise and show the disciple that he did something wrong, but it does not diminish the love that he has for the disciple. And so also with Krishna, that's the point that's being made here. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj went on to do great things. He'd made this book distribution parties, and
Yeah.
it became a very, all across America they were placing whole sets of the Bhagavatam in different universities, getting into a van, 4 or 5 people driving, cooking on the van, worshipping deities in the van, parking in some public space, bathing in public toilets, just going in and placing the books as they were coming out. So he did phenomenal things. And he, as I said, was one of those remarkable people who could take liberties with Srila Prabhupada. Nobody else dared to refuse to obey or to challenge or to confront. And Prabhupada went along with his mood. So, going back to this Yogakshemam, yeah, he definitely, that they who worship me with exclusive devotion. Sometimes you have like what they call the beginner's luck, even in spiritual life. Even if we've just shown a little bit of devotion or whatever, and we are in some bad spot, very much people, I've heard devotees share stories, members, friends share stories of how he somehow made something possible, which if that hadn't happened, they would have been in a big plight. And what they needed to have preserved, he made that also possible. So does some such, how come this is your favorite verse, and does something come to mind for you?
I don't know. When I was reading it, when I first read it, I just saw this verse and I was like, okay, it just spoke to me for
Resonates.
some reason. It just
Yeah.
spoke to me. I don't know what it was. It just spoke to me for some reason, and I was like, I just thought it's such a nice verse to,
Uh-huh.
it's a very sweet verse to hear, and
Sweet
it's like,
words.
and also like when you listen to it, it kind of like what you want to, like the essence of what I feel is, what in my opinion, like what is like bhakti for me or bhakti yoga for me, it comes in this verse like very nicely. I don't know why.
I see. Okay,
Like
so it will, yeah.
what I feel about Krishna, and like his, like how devotion is or bhakti is, like according to like what my understanding of all of it is, it's sort of it's mentioned like it's said in this verse in that way. I feel, I don't know
Okay, so it resonates. What's what the
why.
people say? It resonates. It resonated
Resonates.
with you straight away. Absolutely, because different devotees will, when they think back, calm, will have a different
Yeah.
recollections of how actually this verse really worked for them. And yeah, I said beginner's luck or not, even right through our spiritual life, when we look back and we are desperately searching for some solution, and Krishna definitely produces it, and then that he also preserves what we had or have. Can I just look at who is the character who slashed the translation of BG 9.22 and then was corrected by Krishna himself? I just Google and see.
Hmm. Should we
Uh,
end the recording for
yeah,
today?
yeah. We should end it because it's 6 o'clock. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I'll end the recording then. Thank you
Yeah.
guys. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.